Welcome to Immigration Quicktake. This is Ellie Rutledge with the American Immigration Lawyers Association. Both the House and Senate are ramping up to take on immigration bills in the next few weeks. And here to discuss the upcoming votes and what AILA members can do is Chen, Director of Advocacy for AILA. Greg, thanks for joining me. What are the plans in the House and Senate in the coming weeks?
Ellie, the politics are constantly shifting right now in Congress with respect to what's happening on immigration legislation. And so it's hard to actually predict what's happening. Let me focus on two things that are good barometers. The first thing is a border bill that passed out of the House Homeland Security Committee last week on a party line vote. This was a bill sponsored by Chairman McCall of that committee. And the bill is a big change from what passed out of the last Congress out of the committee with bipartisan support. The new bill has morphed quite a bit, and what happens now is that it requires that the Customs and Border Protection, DHS, ensure that there are no unlawful entries at a 100% rate within 5 years of the bill's enactment. And it also puts a great deal more resources on the border without really explaining why those additional resources are necessary. The reason I focus on these two things is that McCall in the past has had a different approach on border security and has called for more clear metrics on what is needed before requiring really amped up performance measures that don't have a demonstrated need. What we're facing now, or what the committee is facing now with this bill, is initially a plan to move it forward to the House floor this coming Wednesday. The storm that hit the eastern seaboard yesterday and today scuttled a vote immediately on that in the Rules Committee, but now it appears that the bill may not go forward at all because of infighting within the Republican caucus as to whether or not they can go forward with it. Some of this is about jurisdictional issues, but I think there's also a more fundamental problem within the caucus about how tough they want to be on this to address conservative needs and whether or not they want to pass something that is more responsible and reasonable in terms of policy. The other major issue or bill that's moving forward is the DHS appropriations bill that passed out of the full House about 2 weeks ago and is now sitting on the desk of the Senate folks. About next week or the week after, we anticipate that this will be brought up in the Senate. And the big question is this. In addition to the bill itself, which has to be passed before February 27th, the House bill included 5 amendments that by and large are meant to strip Obama of the authority to implement his November 20th executive action plans on immigration. With those amendments, the bill will almost certainly run into Democratic unified opposition in the Senate. And the real question is whether or not Senate Majority Leader McConnell is going to advance that more extremist bill or something a little bit more reasonable.
Thanks, Greg. We hear the Attorney General nominee's confirmation hearing might get into some discussion on immigration. Is that what you expect to see?
We've already seen the AG nominee Lynch being criticized for statements she made earlier in the fall that the president's executive actions are within his legal authority. So we will almost definitely see questions and rhetoric coming from mostly the Republican side of the aisle challenging her on this issue. I think her position and statement will be very much party line, given that she's coming as the Democratic nominee on the issue. So I don't think there'll be any surprises, but that's likely what will happen. Another issue that AILA is looking very carefully at is whether Republicans are going to press the Attorney General nominee on the issue of prosecutions of individuals who are entering illegally or re-entering illegally under the Operation Streamline program. These prosecutions of people who are essentially immigration status violators, but which are heightening those offenses to felony federal convictions, is something AILA has been very concerned about because it makes the fact of somebody entering illegally as an immigration status violator into a much more serious offense that has much more dire consequences. And this is what has resulted in a lot more people who are status violators being targeted for immigration enforcement. And from AILA's viewpoint, those people simply shouldn't be priorities.
What can members do to push back?
Ellie, the fact is we are in a really important stage right now where the new Congress is in. We're on a very heightened alert of partisanship where both parties are attacking each other. And the two issues I would ask members to focus on, one is telling both Republican and Democratic members that they need to get the job done on immigration legislation. And for the Republican caucus, that really means them making some hard choices. Are they going to take the path of much more anti-immigrant restrictionist legislation that's just going to be a food fight between the two parties? Or are they going to shoot for a more middle-of-the-road line of policymaking and pass legislation that's going to get Democratic votes and essentially require the president to sign it? That would be much more productive from AILA's viewpoint and could also be a mark on the Republicans' ledger on the positive side to show that they can do some real positive thinking on immigration legislation reform. The second issue that I would emphasize that members of AILA should be writing letters to the editor about or opinion editorials is to ask for real full-throated implementation of these executive actions that got announced on November 20th. The administration is trying to do its best here, but there are so many different elements to it on adjudications that benefit businesses and families, of course on the DACA program, and they need to hear from AILA members about how best to do it. So those are the places that we'd really emphasize folks to get engaged on. And of course, National Day of Action is coming in just a couple of months on April 16th, and we hope you will come out in full numbers here in DC to get Congress mobilized on it.
Thanks, Greg, for joining me. For the rest of you, please stay tuned for more updates from the American Immigration Lawyers Association.